Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science, the only site on the internet that does physics at all. Okay, today we have a great day. We're going to be talking a little bit about the block universe. We've been talking about that lately. Time travel, time dilation, a lot of that stuff that comes out of general relativity. And we're going to see if any of that has any validity whatsoever. Okay. First of all, I hope everybody can hear me fine and can see me fine. Okay, please let me know. Otherwise, sometimes I continue speaking. I don't realize, that maybe the sound is off or whatever. So anyone out there, please let me know. Okay. I'm going to start with usually the extinction segment. We're going to cover a couple things here. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I always need reassurances, okay? Okay, fellow asked a question about Argentina. It's been in the news lately, and it's somewhat important for the theory of extinction because there's a lot of people out there who are what I call narco caps, anarcho capitalists. Anarch or whatever they call themselves. I call them narco caps. Anyways, this is what this fellow said. I wonder what you think about fortification of system in Argentina. Libertarian tyranny. Milei repairs repressive forces against popular uprising in Argentina. Okay, and they have a new president over there. And so the question is, whether this is going to be good or bad for the country, for Argentina, right? And first I want to say that I guess one of the reasons the fellow asked the question is that, I'm from Argentina. I was born in the southern part of the city, really in the suburb, just next to the city, and born in Lanús, 15 blocks away from where Maradona, the soccer player, was born. He was born at the Lanús Hospital. I was born in Lanús. Another fellow that was born in that region and also lived in that region is my friend Pope Frankie. Okay, Pope Frankie. He was born in Flores, and means flowers in Spanish, and that's more or less close to where I was born. And even better, we have something more in common with the Pope, and that's we're both from the same team. Team is San Lorenzo, which means St. Lawrence. You wonder why the Pope is St. Lawrence. Yeah, it was founded by a priest, the team. Anyways, I have a little anecdote involving my oldest son, Eric. And we were in Argentina a few years back, I think about 5 years ago. And he went with his suit. And this was a special suit that he had made. It's about a crow. It's the crow. And the crow is the mascot of San Lorenzo. That's why he dressed up as a crow. And he wanted to take a picture of himself with the team. So we went to the stadium, San Lorenzo Stadium. And they wouldn't let us in, not to see the team. They thought we were spies that were there to see how the team was practicing and playing, and so they didn't want anybody watching that. Okay, and so we lost hope. We started going back home, and just as we were going out, here comes a team of, I think it was 10 or 15 people with cameras and so on. Turns out it's a film crew. Italian and Spanish from Spain, right? Film crew that was there to film a movie. And the movie's name is Il Nostro Papa, which means our Pope. And they were at San Lorenzo because the Pope is from San Lorenzo. He's a fan of San Lorenzo. And San Lorenzo fans like that because they say, hey, we got God on our side, And so they saw my son with the crow costume, and they say, "Oh, we need you. We need you. Do you mind participating in our movie? And it just came out of nowhere. And so we went with the crew, and they filmed him, as part of the movie. And this is more or less what it looks like. Here, let me show you just a very brief piece of that. Give me a second here. And this is what the movie was about, Il Nostro Papa. It talks about Pope Frankie, right? And there's my son up there on in the stands, and you can see that he's dressed as a crow. And here you'll see him a little better. And we took a picture with the crew afterwards. There you see the crew. And we were all happy just because that happened. The Pope blessed us, right? And then all the girls and everybody, just about everybody wanted to have a picture with the crow. So, we had a lot of fun with that. And thanks to that, we also got to eat a barbecue for free. We were invited inside the club, and he was able to be at the game that Sunday, or Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember now which. And, we were there with the crowd. He was in the stadium. They allowed him into the stadium, and he was able to do, dress up as the mascot. And so, we were kind of happy that all that happened. Just happened by sheer luck. So if you see the movie, I think it's from 2019. Look it up, Il Nostro Papa, Italian-Spanish movie of some kind. And I didn't see it yet. You'll see the crow there, okay? Anyways, so this fellow asked about good old Milei. And here, let me show you some headlines that came out in the last few days about good old Milei. Okay, here it is. Why Argentina's shock measures may be the best hope for its ailing economy. Analysis of Milei's mission improbable for Argentina has investors daring to dream. Yeah, a lot of people are dreaming. They think that maybe something's going to change over there. Okay. Anxiety and resignation in Argentina after Milei's economic shock measures. Immediately, Milei put all these shock measures in place, specifically the dollar. He devalued the peso, by raising it compared to the dollar. It was less than 400, was about 350, 360. And now per dollar, and now it's 800 pesos per dollar. Okay, so he raised, and that caused a big shock because suddenly all the prices in Argentina doubled. And I got an example there for you in a minute. Milei moves to limit anti-austerity protests in Argentina, so they're going to use some heavy-handedness there to quell any riots or any protests. And Argentina's new president's alarmed LGBTQ activists with closure of diversity ministry. He's even done that. And the previous government had a different take on that. And here, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And here you'll see why. Okay. That's Fernandez's son, not daughter, but son there on the left. His name is Stanislao Fernandez. And he likes to dress up as a woman. And then on the right-hand side, you see Bolsonaro's, who was the president of Brazil at the time, son. And when you compare them, well, you can see why many Argentines were not very happy with that comparison. Okay, and so what happened in the end was that Fernandez was overthrown essentially. He was voted out of power, and we have this guy Milei. And yeah, he's going to go against all this stuff that he thinks it's not worth spending a penny on. Okay, so just new things that are going on. And obviously a big change in policy. Not only that, Milei aligned himself with the United States and with the Western world, which is a total change from the Fernandez regime, the two Fernandez regimes, even the woman, Cristina. And they're not related, the two Fernandez, by the way. They have the same last name, but it's a very common name down there. And so, yeah, you have For almost 20 years, you've had the Fernandez in one way or another, the Peronists in power, and that's now radically changed in the other direction. Now it's conservative, right? You could say conservative, from liberal to conservative. And another important detail that's important to keep in mind is that Milei wants to be a Jew. He wants to he wants to convert. And that's somewhat of a problem in Argentina because there are secret groups, that are against Jews over there. And, he's going to have to deal with that. And a lot of military are involved in that as well. Very nationalistic, very ultra-nationalistic, very anti-Jewish. And, you have all kinds of groups there. And so, the question is whether he can continue with this government, especially with the drastic measures he's taking. And everybody, I think, agrees that in the short run, things are going to be very tough for the Argentines, right? And I can just give you an example that happened to me. I was there about a month ago, and the trip from the airport to the city, to the center of the city, by bus, the Tienda León, which is the famous bus route that carries people to the center of the city, costs $4. And it's like a 45-minute ride, so it's quite cheap. Now it's $8 today, okay, at the exchange rate. And then there was we made a trip from Buenos Aires to St. Louis, out there in the west. It's an 11-hour ride on the bus, and that cost us $25. And now it costs over $50. So you can see how that's going to impact a lot of people there. And, all the prices rising and so on. So I don't know what's going to happen. In the short run, there's going to be a lot of pain. And if he can withstand that, maybe through measures, military measures, police, how do you contain the riots, right? Well, maybe something happens where the country rises back up again. That's for us to see. It's like they say in the long run, but like economist once said, in the long run, we're all dead. So we don't know about the long run, but the short run, there's going to be a lot of pain. And probably there's going to be a lot of burning of tires and breaking of windows, riots. Okay, so here's one of the problems that Milei has, and he's got a 400 billion debt bomb. Okay, he's got to deactivate that bomb, and I don't know if he'll be able to. They owe like 50 billion to the monetary fund, the International Monetary Fund, and in fact today or yesterday, I think he got a loan from a South American conglomerate there for 1 billion, and so he says, hey, I'm already on top. I've already achieved something. And maybe he does. I don't know. It wasn't good for me because when I was there a month ago, I paid everything very, very cheaply. And now if I go there, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So for me, it wasn't good. I mean, damn the country. The country is, a problem for the people in Argentina. No doubt about it. They're going to suffer. And they were suffering. Here comes this fellow, and he just changes it. He just drops a bomb on everybody, so it's going to be tough. And I don't know if they can recover from that, but we'll find out, right? The point here is that for me, it's not good simply because, when you go there with dollars or euros, you can stretch them quite, everything's very cheap. And now it's less cheap, So for me, it wasn't good, but, that's the breaks. Okay, and here's another headline there. It says, there's no alternative to shock treatment. He says there's no money. Essentially, that's what he told the public. Inflation's at 142%, 43 billion in debt. And it says he's an anarco capitalist, which I call narco caps, right? And it says currently $1 is worth $3.85. That's what it was worth until he came, and now he changed that to 800. So now a dollar in the official market is $800, 800 pesos. And so he doubled it. And that's what caused all the prices to skyrocket. And yeah, if you go to Argentina, mark my words, I haven't done it. For the last 40, 50 years, I've never exchanged at the official rate. Never used credit cards. Not in Argentina. You'd be very stupid to do so. Why? Because always the black market gives you more than what the government gives you. And there's a thriving black market. It's been there for a long time. And they never give you fake bills. They try to scare you, say, hey, you might get a fake bill. No, you never get a fake bill because they make enough money as it is. They don't need to put fake bills into circulation. If anyone, it's the government who puts fake bills into circulation. Anyways, so what is a narco capitalist, which is what this Millet fellow says he is, okay? And here it is. This comes from the Wikipedia. Narco capitalism, or they say ANCAP, but I prefer narco, right? Is an anti-statist libertarian political philosophy and economic theory that seeks to abolish what? Centralized states in favor of stateless societies with systems of private property enforced by private agencies. The non-aggression principle, free markets, and self-ownership, which extends the concept to include control of private property as part of the self. But here comes the nice part. It says, in the absence of statute, anarcho-capitalists hold that society tends to contractually self-regulate and civilize through participation in the free market, which they describe as voluntary society involving the what? Voluntary exchange of goods and services. In a theoretical anarcho-capitalist society, the system of private property would still exist and be enforced by what? Private defense agencies. Private defense agencies. And or insurance companies selected by customers, which would operate competitively in a market and fulfill the roles of courts and the justice. So the question is, who are they going to hire? I mean, Ivan the Terrible, or what? Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan. Who are these private companies that they're gonna, hire to protect you? I can only be very, very extremely skeptical of narco caps. It's a lot of the people who, especially the young youth, the young generation, who are so fed up with government intervening in their lives and telling them you got to get a vaccine and all this kind of stuff, that what has happened, they've gone the other way and they say, we don't want any more government. We're sick of government. And they're all politicians, they're all crooks, And so people have lost confidence in the politicians and they don't want them anymore. And they say, look, I hate for government to come in here and tax me when I can just reach a deal with my neighbor and exchange something with him. He wants my table and I want his TV, so we trade. It's a voluntary exchange. That's the way they want it, And the problem I see, at least the overall problem, is that first, this is microeconomics. And what this guy Millet is doing is he's doing macroeconomics. He's going to be applying this to the whole country. That's one issue. And they're not the same thing. One thing is to trade with your neighbor without government intervention. In fact, that's what happens with the peso versus the dollar. You go out in the street, you exchange with someone, and he gives you peso, and you give him a dollar, and he gives you more pesos than the government. Very simple. It's narco cap at its best, But the question is, these people live under the umbrella of government. And it's easy to trade and do all that stuff when you have a government, when you have already a society running. And these people say, we're going to get rid of government, and do it on our own. We want freedom from government. And, they haven't invented anything, partly because, that's why they use that name anarcho, because they are anarchists. And they haven't invented anarchism, for sure. Anarchists came to being in the 19th century and early 20th century especially, and they were these guys who threw Molotov cocktails. So everybody looks at an anarchist as a violent person in general. But these guys say, no, we're going to do it the civilized way. We're going to do anarcho-capitalism, and so we're going to do it, by just ignoring the government, trying to get away from them and finding ways of skirting taxes and all of these things that they impose on us. And we're going to try to do our own thing on the side. Yeah, you can do that. You can do it on your own. But the question is, you've got still the government there. How do you get rid of government is the question. And, one of the guys who tackled that was Marx himself. Karl Marx said, hey, communism, this is the way he envisioned it, will evolve to a point where at some point, people are going to decide that they don't need government anymore, and government itself will cease to exist. He saw the same thing. He was deep in his heart, he was an anarchist. In other words, he said, let's do communism first and we'll work our way, through the dictatorship of the proletariat. We're going to work our way to no government, to anarchism. What he objected to is imposing anarchy, that same in his days. He said it's too early. That's more or less the way he looked at it. And so there were differences between the anarchists and the communists there in that sense. But these people haven't really invented anything. They want to free themselves from government, and I wish them good luck. I don't think it's ever going to happen, especially when we're running out of time. What do we say here in this channel? We're the last generation of humans on Earth. And so I don't think there's enough time for them to impose this ideal society where there is no government. I used to think in those terms myself once, saying someday, or it'd be nice if there was a world government and then world government itself ceases to exist. Yeah, great as a dream. Another thing is reality and achieving it, okay? Anyways, primarily I want to say that in this channel, the best answer for this fellow is that we don't really do politics. Okay, I don't like to do politics, and I stopped doing politics a long time ago. I'd say at least 30 years. Okay, I don't do politics. Meaning, what is politics? Politics is opinion, and opinion is religion. Politics is simply one kind of religion. That's all it is. And because what is it? It's opinion. Some people like, candidate A, the other guy likes candidate B. Some people like Ukraine, other people like Russia. Some people like Israel. Some people like the Hamas or suffer for them. Some people like the Azerbaijanis, others like the Armenians, and China and Taiwan and India and Pakistan. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Should you take sides? People suffer and they get all nervous. They read the news and they say, look what's happening over there, look what's happening over there, and they're killing people here and they're killing people there. And they begin to take sides. And it turns out, if the solution is very simple. Just turn your TV off, and forget it. If it gets you nervous, it gets you excited, hey, turn your TV off. That's the solution to all your problems. You solve all the world problems with that. And you have to remember also that the politicians, they don't care. They do whatever they have to, and they do whatever they want. They do whatever is in their best interest. And I'll give you an example. On the one hand, you have Netanyahu in Israel, and he says, oh, we're going to free the hostages. And he sends an army to beat up the people in Hamas and try to recover, rescue the hostages. And that's more or less like, someone is held hostage in a house, right? And there's a gunman with a gun to the hostage's head. And you have all the police all around there. How do you think you're going to free the guy? You think you're going to free the guy by, storming the house? Well, I doubt it, because as soon as someone gets in there, the first bullet goes to that head. And so, it's not the way you want to free people. So what they're doing now is just a lot of lip service. They're saying, look, we're going to free the hostages, and they're doing it with the army. For sure, they're not going to free a single one if they do it that way. The only way to do that is to negotiate, right? If you want to really free the hostages. So on the one hand, they say, we want to free the hostages. On the one hand, they send the army. That's on one side. How about the other side? How about the Arab side? And this shows you why you should choose sides. The Arab side, you have Iran, and Iran is telling all the Arab countries there and saying, look, you guys want to be real? You want to help Hamas? You really root for the Arab world? Very simple. Stop all commerce with Israel. Boycott Israel. I mean, just like Europe and the United States did with Russia, right? Do the same thing to Israel. And what do the Arab countries do? And I'm talking about several of them. Well, they said, we're going to pull our ambassadors. We're going to withdraw our ambassadors in protest. Well, that's very cosmetic of you. Why don't you do what Iran says, and says, go in there and boycott the economy. Then it's going to hurt them. But as long as you keep the economy rolling, you're just giving lip service to saying that you are in favor of the Hamas group and that you really suffer for all those people. So the politicians on both sides, they just play games. And all I can say is you're a fool if you root for any of them. The best thing, don't root for any of them. The politicians will do what they have to do anyways, whether you like it or not. So that's the way I see that. So yeah, stay away from opinion. Here's a comparison. Who do you think is best? Bugs Moran, north side of Chicago, 1930s there, 1920, late 1920s really. Or the south side, Al Capone. I mean, who do you think you should root for? Okay? Should you go with the north or with the south? Well, my suggestion is, don't go with any of them. They're all mafias. And same with all these politicians. They'll do whatever they have to do anyway. So it doesn't help you to lose a single drop of feeling for any of that. And again, if you do, just turn your TV off. You'll have it solved. Okay, so is Argentina the only place in the world that's got problems? Well, here, let me show you something. This is Iraq, okay? And it says, Iraq scrambles to contain fighting between U.S. troops and Iran-backed groups fearing Gaza spillover, okay? And it says there, listen to this, it says Baghdad relies heavily on Washington's sanction waivers to buy electricity from Iran. And since the 2003 U.S. invasion, Iraq's foreign currency reserves have been housed at the U.S. Federal Reserve. Iraq's money is in New York, giving the Americans significant control over Iraq's supply of dollars. The United States extended Iraq's sanctions waiver by 4 months to purchase Iranian electricity. Washington has used the sanctions waiver as one of its cards, pressure points, in an economy-centered efforts to pressure Iran and Iraq. Okay, and here you see what kind of effect that has. People go out into the streets because they're having economic problems, okay? And again, it says, for months, the United States has restricted Iraq's access to its own dollar, trying to stamp out what Iraqi officials describe as rampant money laundering that benefits Iran and Syria. Okay, and so it goes on and on. The point here is that, all these countries depend on the United States. So you wonder how come the United States has so much power in negotiating power, politics, and so on, because it controls a lot of the money that these people need. And the governments maybe have idealistic people in their country, nationalistic and so on, and religious fanatics and so on. And they have to cater to them if they want to stay in power, but at the same time, they have to be, they have to shake hands with both the devil and God. And so they have to cater also to the United States and say, look, we're doing our best here to keep the crowds down and so on. So, they have all these pressures from above and below, and they try to, walk a middle line, partly for their own personal interests, right? That's the way politics works. So again, you should not put any heart, any feeling behind any of this stuff. And Iraq's the only one. Argentina are the only ones. Well, take a look here. It says India, Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia could emerge as engines of global growth. One liner that I found around there, right? And so you look at these and say, okay, let's see how well these people are doing. And the reason they mention those 4 countries is they're highly populated. There's a lot of population there. It says here, India, for example, Brazil, economic growth will be just 2.8 in 2022 and 1.2 in 2023. The current economic crisis, right? There's a crisis there, has had a severe effect on the Brazilian labor market. In 2021, the World Bank calculated 14.4% of working age Brazilians were unemployed. And I would say it's higher because all those people who work in services are also unemployed. Okay, is Indonesia doing any better? Okay, another very populous country, I think 3rd or 4th in the world. The 3 key economic challenges for the Indonesian government are controlling inflation, providing job opportunities through investments, and maintaining growth. How about Pakistan, another populous country, is faced with a number of economic challenges which include a balance of payment crisis, soaring inflation, mounting debt obligations, and persistent budget deficit. And then we look at Nigeria, the biggest economy in Africa, in the continent of Africa, followed by Egypt and South Africa. And it says persistent inflation to reach a 17-year high of 25.8% in August 2023, which, in combination with sluggish growth, is leaving millions of Nigerians in poverty. Okay, so how are all these countries doing? I think they're all doing terrible. There's not a single country on the planet that's doing good. And you might say, well, that's always been like that through history. This is new. What we have today is new. And I keep saying, the reason it's new is that we're in a different type of economic mode. We're in a service economy. Before we were in, manufacturing, and before that we were in agriculture. Service economy, totally different ballgame, okay? The most advanced nations on the planet have 85% of their economy is services. What is services? Services is another word for unemployment. You don't do anything. You're not producing anything. You look from the sky, you look down on the earth, you see what's constructed. You see the material things that have been constructed and made. You don't see the promises. You don't see the bank accounts. You don't see insurance, all those and any other service that you can think of. Those are not there. Service is unemployment. There's nothing being produced. And you judge a country's expansion by, how much progress you see in the material things, okay? And so all I can tell you is that, there's a lot of unemployment, and we're creating more services and less manufacturing, which is a lot of it being replaced by robots, by the way, and more efficiency. And agriculture in the most advanced nations is like 1% of their GDP. So just keep all that in mind. The global economy is not doing well at all. And what do we say here? We're going to say that the global economy is at some point going to collapse. We cannot grow forever. Partly we cannot grow forever because population doesn't grow forever. In fact, population it's not declining, it's still growing, but it's growing at an ever slower rate, and we will reach zero population growth on the planet as a whole probably by mid-century if things continue as they are now. That means that companies that expect more demand tomorrow, more customers, well, they're going to be out of luck because there's going to be fewer and fewer marginal, increases in population. That means you're going to have less and less demand over time. At some point, there's going to be a crisis that cannot be solved just by creating money or just modifying the money supply or anything like that. Any fiscal or monetary policy will fail. You just can't put people to work in unnecessary jobs. And we're going to reach that stage. I think, and at that point, at some point, money will be no more. In fact, we're having a very interesting situation in Argentina where people can barely make it to the end of the month. And the government is now giving a bonus between 50,000 and 80,000 pesos, which is about $50 to $80, to keep them running till the end of the month. That's how bad things are over there. And you say, well, that's just Argentina. But that's going to come to a lot of countries when they reach a certain level where they can't grow anymore, because, you can't have just external investments, because a lot of that also takes money out of the country, right? And so on. There's this play. But just to make a long story short, I'm just saying you cannot keep growing forever economically. Okay, and at that point, at some point, right there, no matter how much money they give you, will not be able to make it till the end of the month. And even the workers, they receive money and they barely make it to the end of the month. They can barely pay rent and also food. And at some point, there's going to be such a crisis that people will say, hey, money is worthless. I don't want that money anymore. I want something real, like food, And it will be the fight between the haves and have-nots. The haves will be those who have food, and the have-nots will be those that don't. Okay, that's in a nutshell what I have to say about that. But again, we don't do politics here. I'm not interested in politics. The only reason I mentioned politics is in relation to extinction. That's the only time I put economics and politics into the conversation. Other than that, I'm not interested in either subject in any specific way. Okay, another subject that came up, and I'm going to close with this. And here it is: this panspermia stuff. It says scientists surprised by samples recovered from ancient asteroid. Asteroid name is Benu or Benu. Among the findings from the early Benu analysis are what could be the building blocks of life, organic compounds containing carbon-carbon or carbon-hydrogen bonds. Meteorites found on Earth have had similar compounds, and as nature explains, those carbon-rich minerals may have contributed to life on our planet. Okay. And so what are we talking about? We're talking about, little bugs crawling on an asteroid and having a free trip down here to Earth, right? And so what is this panspermia? Well, here it is. Here's the definition from the Wikipedia. It says the hypothesis that life exists throughout the universe, distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, comets, planetoids, as well as by spacecraft carrying unintended contamination by microorganisms, known as directed panspermia. Okay, the theory argues that life did not originate on Earth, but instead evolved somewhere else and seeded life as we know it. And this is what panspermia requires. Says that life has always existed in the universe somewhere, and we have no problem with that one because we're saying the universe was eternal. There was never a first living entity in the universe, so we agree with this, except we have a different context for it. Okay, organic molecules originated in space, perhaps to be distributed to Earth. Absolutely not. Life originated from these molecules extraterrestrially. Well, there is extraterrestrial life out there. I'm convinced of that, but that doesn't mean that number 4 is correct, which is this extraterrestrial life was transported to Earth. Okay, here we maintain that life cannot, no living entity can travel interstellarly, let alone intergalactically. Okay, it's impossible. It's just beyond. Mother Nature never intended for that to happen. Neither did Father Universe. So here we have what these people say. That let me illustrate this. Here it goes. You see the little bug on an asteroid. Okay. Some kind of bug, some kind of living entity, it doesn't matter. And the asteroid comes to Earth, right? And somehow, lands, you could say collides, we can say it has a soft landing, no problem. And the bug now, travels within the Earth, maybe on a branch of a tree, and he gave life to all of us eventually, right? Okay, it's not that kind of a bug that we're talking about, obviously. I'm just showing that there's a living entity traveling on a rock. Right? And no, it's impossible. It's impossible first because the rope does not allow, for any rope model of light does not allow for any living entity to travel to the nearest star. Okay, you can send robots, yeah, that could happen, but not living entities. Okay, and living is that which moves by itself without the artificial, not artificial. I mean natural, that moves against gravity, moves against the path of least resistance. Okay. Anyways, the point here is that I think the world is about to collapse very soon, the global economy. When, not if, but when that happens, well, we're all screwed. It's the end of man. It's the end of our species. And someday I think we have to end. Why not sooner than later? I mean, do we get to choose? Or does Mother Nature get to choose when humans disappear from the face of the earth? And with humans, the whole mammal order disappears as well. And that's what happened to the dinosaurs. And part of the reason for that is that we're going to liquidate any living entity before we go. We're going to eat it. Okay, so get ready for the next few years, something might happen. And I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. That's my 5 cents worth on that. Okay, let's move on to the subject matter of today, and that's going to be in the physics department, and we're going to do what? We're going to do a little bit of block universe again, time travel, but time dilation and, stretching of time. We stretch this thing we call time. Mathematicians love to deal with time because they can do whatever they want with time in their equations. And the funny part about it is, where you can start is that they never define the word time. They still don't have an idea what the word time means, right? What the definition of time is. They cannot define it. But here everybody uses it, puts it in the equations, and then gives you, what's worse, a physical interpretation. See, they can do whatever they want in their equations. That's a description. But when they jump the fence and come into physics and try to give you a physical interpretation of their equation, that's where we have a problem, because these people say they are physicists, which they are not. They are mathematicians. But then they give you a physical interpretation, which belongs strictly to physics. They say it doesn't. They say that physics is about equations. And if that's the case, then why did they even attempt to give a physical interpretation? I mean, if it's not part of their job description, if it's not part of their, their job functions, why have they tried to give you a physical interpretation? They're not experts at physical interpretations. And so why did they do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if they didn't, their equations are totally meaningless, worthless. If you cannot relate your equation to the real world and tell me how the world works, with or without your equation is worthless. And that's where we stand today. They give you an irrational explanation. When you criticize them and say, look, I call your bluff. Time does not dilate. You cannot travel through time. And you tell them all this stuff. There is no such thing as a block universe. They say, well, that's not part of what we do. What we do is equations. Then why did you attempt to do it? Why did you give me this bogus, explanation of how the universe works? The mechanism, the explanation, when you're not an expert at it, when you later on dismiss it as saying, well, it's not part of our job description anyways. So why did you try? And this is the problem. They sell it to you like if they know, they sell it to you on the basis of authority, and then they take it back when you call their bluff. Okay? And here, we did a little bit of this the other day. I'm going to go quickly through a little review here. We have good old Brian Greene there, Brain Green. And what does Brain Green do? He jumps into a wormhole and he ends up early in the morning where he meets himself. So he traveled through time from evening or noon to morning, and he gets to see himself. So he says you can do this easily by just jumping into a wormhole. Such a cinch, no problem at all. Okay, so this is not the only, just in case, you say, well, maybe he was just talking out of hand or whatever. No, he rubbed it in his, I can't remember, this was from The Elegant Universe or another bit of another series that he had. This is another thing that he showed in that series. And here, let me show it to you. Here goes, watch carefully. He meets the girl, that meets him at the airport or the jet port or the spaceport, and he takes off, goes into outer space, and travels to a black hole. He's going to go around the black hole there and turn a corner and come right back. Okay, so he comes back. Okay, and when he comes back, he arrives here at to meet the same girl, and she's a little older now, And so the question is this possible? Does this make any sense? That he just traveled and, to a black hole and comes back and sees the same girl, but she's not a girl anymore. She's an old lady, but he remains the same. He hasn't changed a bit. Does that make any sense? And they say, well, it makes sense in a block universe that you can travel through time because, you can travel forward. And like in this case, he traveled to the future, right? I don't care how he explained that. It doesn't matter to me. What his mathematics is irrelevant to me. I'm just saying that he traveled to the future. That's what he claims. And he said that's possible. NASA says it's possible. CERN says it's possible. All mathematicians on Earth say it's possible. Okay, so we have this travel to the future. It's possible, right? And I showed this the other day. Here, let me show you this. Give me a second here. And it's this skater. And this fellow is going to, someone's filming him. And this is how it looks. Okay, here it goes. The guy skates. Okay, normal. And now you can see what's happening to all these we'll call him Joe, to all these Joes. Okay, so Joe, we have all these pictures of him little by little, right? And here you see the whole sequence. Okay, so is this possible? I mean, what's the problem here? Well, the problem here is that you see the guy at A, right, which is Joe at A, and the same guy, Joe at B. Okay, that's what the problem is. And why is it a problem? Well, because they say that all these Joes exist simultaneously in the block universe. Okay, so the block universe, you're not seeing time. What you're seeing is a still image, but everybody coexists at the same time, past, present, and future. That's what the block universe is. And the only way you can produce that is if there is no motion whatsoever. First of all, because it's a block universe that you can see in one shot only. That's the first issue. The other one is that there can't be any motion because what they're saying is they're creating matter. They're creating matter. They're creating new Joes at every location there. So Joe from A is not moving all the way to B. What's happening is new Joes are being created in between. And so there is no motion. And they all exist at the same time. So that if you could travel, because I don't know how you can travel in a block universe, it's made of a single piece, right? But let's assume you could travel, you're the only guy who can move. You move and you can see any of those frames because they're still there. That's why you can see them there. You can shake hands with any of those guys because they're still there. The atoms are still there. That's what they're saying. And the only way you can have that is that if you created all these new atoms of Joe that make up Joe. Okay, so this is the big problem that we have there. Okay, so here we have good old Brain Green. And this is what he proposed. He says this is the block universe. Okay, and all those lines that you see there, the white lines coming down, those are slices of time. But we have a problem with slices of time because time is not a slice. They try to say it's a thin slice. No, it's not a thin slice. It's a slice that has no thickness at all. It's zero thin or zero width, zero length, whatever. It has no width at all whatsoever, that slice. It's a cross-section of time. It's a cross-section of motion. Each one of those lines there represents location. Each one of those slices represents location. It's a static concept. And they say, well, that's time. And that's where the first problem comes in because time requires at least 2 frames of the movie, right, of the universal movie. And here they're talking about a single slice, which is a single frame of the universal movie. And that's where we start with problems, okay? So what is the problem? The problem is this. Let me show you here, which I showed you the other day. Here we have atoms, and you would think that if you film these 5 atoms, these are the 5 atoms in the universe, just taking it random, and you can see they're moving in the frame, within the frame, right? So you say, okay, they're moving, right? If I were to run this in a movie camera, some kind, you would see the atoms moving from left to right, okay? And they're moving ever more towards the right. Okay, but that's not what these people say in the black universe. What they're saying is that they're creating matter. They're creating these atoms. They're duplicating each one of those atoms. What you're really seeing is this. You're seeing that each atom is being reproduced. Actually, not even from frame to frame like I'm showing there. I just illustrated so that you can see what these people are saying. They're saying that the previous atom never moved. It's always there. And the only frame that really exists is frame number 457. In fact, someone asked the question, says, well, here, you see that all these other frames, they're just imaginary. They don't exist according to the block universe. The block universe only includes that last frame, 457, and that's the only frame for the block universe. Okay? And so if we were to put the skater now, you'll see that, all these other frames that were there, they're not really there. According to the block universe, the only frame that exists is the one at 457 there on the right. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that all these atoms were created, instead of having there be any motion, no, we created all these atoms of Joe, and he's in the entire picture. In other words, the block universe is a photograph. It's not a dynamic concept, okay? So I hope you're understanding what I'm saying here, okay? Okay, so where does this all lead? Well, here, all these frames exist, okay? And there you see frame number 457. That's the present. We'll call that the present. And that's you there. And we have an atom in your shoulder, that red one there, kind of big, right? But just illustrating there. And the question is, can you travel to frame 154 and talk to yourself? Can that atom be at two places at once? Can it be at frame 457 and also at frame 154? That's the question we're asking, right? And one fella asked that question. In fact, he said the following. He said that frame 154, he says, here it is, says, that frame 154 exists only in memory, right? And that's true. It only exists in your memory. Sometimes you film it and you say, what's in the film? Yeah, it's in the film, but the film is in the present. So it's not like you're looking at the past. You're looking at something that was kept in memory, in some kind of memory. It could be a device, could be your brain, but it's kept in memory, but it doesn't exist out there for real. That atom is already gone because it's now at a different location. That's what it is, okay? So yeah, frame number 154 does not exist. There's nothing there, okay? And so here it is. Frame 154 does not exist. What exists is only what is in frame 457, the present, okay? And all the other frames, both before and after, the future as well, they don't exist. They're not there. Why? Because that frame 457 only it has location, existence. And if you remember, from the Universal movie, existence and location are static concepts. You do not need to move in order to exist. You do not need to move in order to have location. Location is a static concept, so is existence. What is existence? An object with location. And that is in a single frame. That's what we call existence. People who don't like the definition have a very easy task. All they have to do is define the word existence, and then we'll know what they're talking about. Until then, you have to accept the definition, the scientific definition that we propose here. Okay, so here we go with this. Fellow says, travel dilates time, he says. Travel dilates time. They're talking in these terms. They say it dilates time. They see time bending. It's dilating, I guess, getting bigger or whatever. 5 years on a ship traveling at 99% the speed of light, 2.5 years out and 2.5 years back, corresponds to roughly 36 years on Earth. 5 years in space equal 36 years on Earth. Okay, that's what he says. This is what they talk about. And the answer is no, first of all. It's absolutely not true, and this is very easily shown. I don't care where you go. You can go into a black hole and come back. If you want, you can go through a wormhole to another universe and come back. We don't care. The year is defined as one revolution of the Earth around the sun, okay? So the Earth went around the sun either 5 times or 36 times when the guy gets back. So he can't have it both ways. Either the Earth went around the sun 5 times or it went around the sun 36 times. One of the two persons is wrong. And they say, well, I took my atomic clock with me and I measured time with, precise seconds. Well, first of all, there are no such thing as precise seconds, and we've shown that with GPS because clocks run a little differently up there than they do down here. So I don't care how accurate your atomic clock is. As soon as you travel outside the Earth, going to space, well, all bets are off. Your clock is going to tick at a different rate. So we don't know what it's ticking. But again, we don't define the year counting seconds on an atomic clock. The way we define the word year, so we know whether you are 40 years old or 45 years old or 50 years old, how many candles we put on your cake. The way we do it is by revolutions of the Earth around the sun. And again, either that's the best clock there is for the word year. Okay, and so the Earth went around the sun either 5 times or 36 times. One of the two guys is wrong, and hopefully it's the guy who traveled. Okay, so we don't care what that guy measured. When he comes back to Earth, he better have the same number of revolutions around the sun as the guy that was on Earth. Okay? Can't be both ways. That's the way we measure time. We don't use these fancy clocks that the mathematicians use to confuse themselves. Okay, so here we have good old Brian again, and let's put him on again. Here he goes. He's going to travel to that black hole, okay? And he goes out there, and then he comes back. Well, we'll wait for him to come back. Okay, that's 2.5 years, right? Round trip, 5 years, right? Goes around the black hole, comes back, and gets to see the girl again, okay? No longer a girl, okay? And now he's back on Earth, and he sees what? He's going to see this old lady, and that was the same girl that he loved. Now, the strange thing for me about this is that, I was surprised that they still had check-in agents in the future, so many years into the future. You would think that in the next 20 years, they won't have any check-in agents at the airport anymore. But that was, surrealistic for me. But okay, what is good old Brian, good old Brain Green saying? Here it is. He's saying that he goes from slice A to slice B sometime into the future. He stays the same. You can see he hasn't changed much. But the girl, man, boy, she suffered quite a bit. Time really was, very harsh on her. Okay, and so we have a problem with this because you're saying, okay, is this true? Does this make any sense that he stayed the same and she changed? So we're not only talking about time travel here, we're talking about physical, biological changes. Have we really changed? Do we really think that someone changes biologically in this sense, that just because they travel outside the Earth and come back? Okay, you could say that his clock went wrong, that his atomic clock had measured wrong because it was in outer space moving around, etc. Does that mean the guy is physically different, or that affects him physically, like biologically, to such an extent that he remains more or less the same, very little change in his appearance, whereas the persons on Earth aged, 40, 50 years more than he did, and so, again, no common sense there. And of course, when you point that out to the mathematicians, they say, well, that's philosophy of science anyway. We don't care about that. Well, then why did you try to convince me of it? Why did you try to sell me this bluff, and when I call your cards, you don't know what to put on the table because you don't have an answer, a rational answer. Okay, so how do we tackle this problem about time dilation and time travel and stretching time and playing around with the word time? Well, the first way you can do this, the best way, the first step, is to find the definition of the word time. What are we talking about? What is time? What is this thingy we call time, And so here's a fellow, and he went out there and he looked at a couple dictionaries, and he puts this. He says, from Cambridge, time is what we measure in minutes, hours, days, etc. Okay, it's what we measure. Okay, great. Whatever that is, Oxford, what is measured in minutes, hours, days. Longman, the thing that is measured in minutes, hours, days, years, etc. Okay, and Britannica, the thing that is measured as seconds, minutes, etc. So they all say the same thing. It's measuring of seconds, minutes, hours, years, whatever that is. What is that? What do you mean you measured Hours. What does that mean? What did you measure? Hours? What is that? I thought hours is defined as time. How are you going to define hour except using the word time? And if you define the word time using the word hours or minutes or second, you're just running around in circles. Okay? So let's go to a more, because that came out, I guess, primarily from Google. The guy just searched Google and found those. Fine, no problem. Those are the dictionaries, what the dictionaries say. Here, let's go to an official site. Here's the NIST. NIST is the National Institute of Standards. Okay, and this is a fellow who's worked many years, 37 years, working on developing atomic clocks of the future. Has been the focus of my career over the past 30 years. Okay, so he tries to answer, what then is time? Okay, so here we have an expert. Okay, fortunately, finally. Time appears to be the most bizarre of our basic units. Time is a slippery creature. Now, that's a terrible way to start a presentation, right? St. Augustine remarked, what then is time? If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know. Okay, that's great. So St. Augustine had no idea what time was. How about Heine? Well, Heine says, concluded after much thought that time is what clocks measure, which was what time, seconds, minutes, hours, years, right? Okay, so we haven't learned much from Einstein either, okay? And then he continues, says, whatever time is, for reasons for which I still puzzle, so he still doesn't know what time is, we can measure the passage of time precisely. So all he does is measurement, but he still has no idea what time is. He cannot define the word time, and he just measures it, whatever that is, whatever he's measuring. And he says, time is the accumulation of identical, repeatable events. I guess that's when you see Joe in every frame. Repeatable, right? Time might be the ultimate motion. In other words, he has no clue. Here's a guy who studied it for 30 years. He has no idea what he's measuring. He has no idea what time is. And this guy's at NIST. He's got a PhD, etc. So the question is, here you have these gurus. They talk about time, and they have no idea what time is. And so here we have one of our fellows here. His name is Matt O'Dowd. Okay, and he works for PBS. He does this program called Space Time. And he's going to tell us everything about time that you always wanted to know, you were afraid to ask. Okay, and so here it is. And he starts his presentation a little bit on the wrong foot. Okay, so here it is. He starts out, and he's really a caricature of a physicist. He's really a mathematical physicist. He doesn't know anything about physics. And here you can see it. We're going to start out by me totally convincing you. Oh, so his job is not to explain something to you in a rational manner. He's here as a prosecutor trying to convince you of something. Okay, so his job is not to explain or say something rational. He's just trying to convince you. Great. Sounds like religion to me. That time must run slow in a gravitational field. Mass and energy change the lengths of rulers and the speeds of clocks. Mass and energy, two concepts, and they change speeds of clocks. I wonder how mass and energy do it. I mean, these are concepts. I mean, how does a kilogram, right, mass, how does a kilogram change the speed of a clock? I mean, does it smash it or what? It says the curvature in the fabric of space is the cause of gravitation. So he says curvature of the fabric of space. Well, space is not a fabric. Space is nothing. Space is the same thing as vacuum, as nothing. They're synonyms. Nothing means it has no shape. Okay? No dimensions, no volume, no radius, no diameter, no nothing. That's what space is, nothing. And so how can you have the curvature of nothing? But he says that's what causes gravitation, okay? Over the course of your life, your feet will age 1 second more than your head due to gravitational time dilation. Okay, so your feet are older than your head. This is what this, we call them scientists. What do you call this guy? Well, we call them idiots. And you say, Bill, you're insulting the guy. And no, I'm not. I'm treating him with the respect that he deserves. If this guy studied 10 years at the university to come and tell you that your feet are older than your head, he's got to be, if he really believes that, he's got to go to a psychiatrist. And otherwise, he should be laughed off the stage. Okay, that's how simple it is. You're held in your chair right now by the curvature of time. The curvature of time? What is this being brain talking about? What do you mean, how can time curve? What is he talking about? You're held down because your butt is ticking faster than your head. And yeah, I didn't invent this. This comes out of his video. Okay, this is how he starts his presentation. Okay, so not a very good way to start a conversation. Scientific presentation, scientific dissertation, saying that your butt is glued to your chair because time is curved. What does that even mean? What is he talking about? And again, when they dismiss and say, well, that's philosophy. No. Why did you even try to convince me? That's just what he was trying to do. He was trying to convince us, right? He's trying to persuade, convince, recruit us, telling us that he knows, he's an authority. And this is what he comes up with. Okay, let's see. Let's see how it continues. Then he goes out and he says, is all that exists now whatever exists right now? The answer lies between the past and the future, in the elusive, ever-moving eye blink that we call the present. Well, it's not an ever-moving because the present is not anything that's moving. So we need to find out what the present is. Okay, and until he can define the present, he cannot say it's moving time or the moving present. Okay, the present doesn't move. Okay? And if we're talking about now, the present, we got to define. We got to have an idea what this present, this now means. Otherwise, we don't know what he's talking about. He can just give us all this verbiage, and we have no idea what he's talking about. Okay, so here he goes. He says, Newton's picture of the universe included one assumption that we know for sure is wrong. Okay, what is that? The idea of an absolute, clearly definable now. In other words, he's saying you cannot define the word now. You cannot define the word present. That's what he's saying. Okay, and he says Newton failed because, we know that there's no way that you can define the word now. That's how he starts. Okay, so he says, Newton assumed that all particles, all observers, all points in space were ruled by a single constantly ticking clock. This universal clock meant that it was possible to define a notion of now that everyone would agree on. Well, we don't care about agreement. In science, we do not agree. One thing is to define it so that it can be used consistently, rationally, in other words, in an objective manner. And he who doesn't like the definition or has a better one, okay, comes up with a better mousetrap. Or keep your trap shut. Okay, just like that. It's very simple. This is not a question of agreeing. This is a question of defining in such a way that you can use the word consistently, that we know what the word now means or the word present means. Okay, so we look up the word now or present, and this is what we find out there. Oxford, Wikipedia, and Merriam-Webster dictionaries, right? The present, the period of time now occurring. Okay, what is now? Now at the present time or moment. So now is the present now. Great, we've learned a lot. We have these synonyms there, right? Wiki says the period of time that is occurring now. What is now? The present time. And Merriam-Webster, now existing or in progress. What is now? At the present time or moment. So all they did was run around in circles. We have no definition of now or present. And so Mr. O'Dowd was right in that sense. Nobody in mathematics, the religion of mathematics, mathematical physics, people who studied for 10 years and got a PhD, not one of them can tell you what the word now or the word present or the word time mean. They have no idea. So they start talking about them. They tell you all these great things about now and the present and time, and not one of them have been able to define those three words in the last 100 years. Okay, really in the last 10,000 years. Okay, how does this fellow continue? Here he goes. He says, we only experience a single slice at a time, the one that currently exists. Okay, so we have a contradiction there because he says single slice at a time, and he's saying that it's the only one that exists. Exist is a static concept. You don't need to move to exist. He says it's a single slice of time, but time requires two frames. So he's got a contradiction. Either the single slice exists or it's moving through time, as they say. It takes up Either it takes up one frame in the word exist, or it takes up two or more frames in the word time. It can't be both. And there he starts with that contradiction. He doesn't even understand what he said there, right? Or his contradiction, the paradox that he's created there. But then he continues, he says, we can imagine a perspective from outside of both space and time in which this entire structure just exists. Okay, so he's saying that it's a structure, meaning this whole, what he's going to call the block universe, exists in a single structure. Well, then he's not talking about time. He's saying there is no such thing as time in this structure. Okay, it just exists, which is correct. I mean, if he's going to talk about the block universe, it just exists. There is no such thing as time. So he cannot later divide it like Brain Green did by cutting it into slices of time. No, those are slices of locations, if anything, right? But not of time. From that perspective, time does not have a particular direction and there's no preferred present. Well, we don't know about preferred. That's an irrelevant term. We don't care if it's preferred or not preferred, if it's good or bad. Those are qualifiers that we do not use in science. Time is just a dimension like space, and we only observe the flow of time. Now he's talking about the flow of time, and then he talks about existence of time. So either it flows or it exists. If we play these slices in sequence like a flip book, okay, well, he can't do that because he's saying that it's a single block. And we use the term block universe to refer to this view of all space and time just existing in this four-dimensional chunk. So we have a problem because they're mixing dynamic concepts such as flow, right, that something is moving, with an existing chunk that you can see in one shot. So either we're talking about something in motion or we're talking about something that is static. And they don't realize their contradiction. They just use these terms because, again, they never define the word time, the word present, the word now. They don't define these terms. They just use them. They say, oh, you know. And yeah, so they have this block universe, a single block right in front of you. You can see the whole block, but they talk about time moving through that block. Well, if it's a single block, then what you're doing is putting a movie within a picture, which is totally irrational. You're saying that, the Mona Lisa is smiling within the picture. But for smile is a verb. You need at least 2 frames of the movie. I mean, if you have the movie of Mona Lisa smiling, you can see her face changing, her mouth changing, her eyes changing. But you can't see that in a photograph. And these people are saying that Mona Lisa smiles within the photograph. They're saying that the block universe exists within a single photograph in which time is moving. So we have a problem there, serious problem with that. So what's he talking about? Well, he's talking about something like this, okay, where God looks at the block universe there, right? Those white lines coming down, up and down, those are time slices, as they call them. They're really location slices. And, God can see them from heaven, I guess. You can see the whole block universe in one shot. Well, if you can see it all in one shot, then those lines there cannot be slices that are moving across the screen, because either we have a static image or we have something in motion. If I want to see that in motion, I need many frames of the film. I cannot see it in a single frame as you see there. Okay? So this is where the contradiction lies. Okay? And he continues. He says the following. This is how he's coming up with all this stuff. He says, to us, none of the rest of the block universe exists because our existence emerges from the forward evolution of a razor-thin slice. So he kind of defining existence there. He's saying that it's an emergent property that has to do with a forward evolution of a razor-thin slice. That's more or less how he defines existence. He's defining existence with motion. He's embodying motion into the word existence, okay? So he's saying existence is an object that moves, and we say existence is an object that has location. Existence is a static concept, not a dynamic one. It says the perception of existing in a single instant in time is definitely an illusion. Well, that is the definition of existing. Existing means that you exist in a single frame of the universal movie. But this guy says it's time, and time requires 2 frames. Okay, so you exist in 2 frames. So when you say that I exist, what he's saying is that you're in 2 frames at once. You're in frame 457, was it, and 458. You're in both frames because in order to exist, you have to move from one frame to the other. That's what he's saying. In his special relativity theory of relativity, Einstein showed that there is no absolute way to define whether two events happen simultaneously. How do we even say that now, what now means for other parts of the universe? So he says we cannot define this word now. Why? Because it takes time, right, or motion for an image from that other side of the universe to reach your eyes. So he's saying, did that happen at the same time that I'm staring at it? But that's not the issue. The issue is, the question is the word now and the word present and the word time. And again, he hasn't defined them. But if we talk about now, what are we talking about? Okay, that's what we got to figure out, what the word now and the word present mean. What is the scientific definition of now? What is the scientific definition of present? So that we can use it consistently in a conversation. This guy's all over the place. He's talking about meaning motion, observer. You have to wait for the image to reach you, and then you don't know if it happened now or it happened before or later or whatever. And then he hasn't defined present or time either, right? Nothing, not even information, can travel faster than light. We don't care about that, even though it's true. Yeah, that means that any distant event is already in the past by the time we see it. Irrelevant, totally irrelevant. We're talking about now and not now when it happened. Okay, either we talk about now, present, or we talk about happening. Happening requires two frames. Now and present, single frame. They're static concepts. The present, the now, is right now, one frame of the film. Okay, so here it is. This is from good old Brain Green again, and he's saying that you have all these time slices in the universal block universe, right? And yeah, again, we have a problem because you can see we need a movie to see all these time slices and how they're coming up one after another. And that's not what he showed. He says that you can see this whole thing in a single picture. And so we have a contradiction between what they illustrate and what they're saying. They're saying you can see it all in one picture, and here you see many pictures. You see many frames, okay? So they do have a contradiction. Okay, so why don't we define this famous word time and not so much time, but present and now. What are the scientific definitions of these words? And here it is, okay? Here's the scientific version, okay? Present, now, it's a static concept, okay? And they involved only location. Location is a static concept. It also involves existence. Existence is a static concept. You don't need to move to exist. Okay, so what's the present? Location of every atom in the universe, okay? Single frame of the universal movie. So in one frame, the yellow concepts there, they're all static concepts. You have object, distance, location, existence, and we can add now, present and now. That's what present now mean. Whatever's in that picture in a single frame, that's now. And it only involves location between atoms in the universe. They're not what you see on the bottom there, time. Time is a dynamic concept. In order to conceptualize time, you need at least two frames of the movie. Therefore, now is not part of time. Okay, now is just a single frame in the movie. Okay, time, on the other hand, first you require motion. You can't have time without motion, and time is simply a comparison of two motions. Okay, so and you require memory. Okay, so what are the conclusions from Mr. O'Dowd? He says, consider the time slice of your present. Okay, we're in the present. It's a time slice. So hopefully there's nothing moving in that present, right? We can imagine other observers on that time slice that surely must exist. Again, he's talking a single slice, meaning nothing's moving really, because he's talking about time, but really he's talking about location. Okay? And he says nothing's moving. You have observers on that same slice, which is a slice of location in the universe. Every atom just has distance with respect to all other atoms in the universe. That's all we have. It's hard to accept that only the present exists, which is what he just defined. In other words, what we're talking about is location. That is the present. Okay? That only the current slice of the black universe has meaningful reality because it is impossible to define what that slice actually is. What do you mean it's impossible? I just defined it. I'm saying it's location. It's location of every atom in the universe. That's your slice of what he called time, which is really a slice of motion, location. That's what that is. It's just location. It's also hard to accept that only the past exists and the future doesn't, because the present of someone else on your slice of present could be literally any point in your future. Absolutely not, because now he's talking about motion. He's saying, I'm going to move to the future, right? And I'm going to meet this guy that took me time, took me motion to get there, right? And so he's saying it took me motion. By the time I get there, well, time has passed. And now we're talking about his now, my now, everybody's now, his present, my present, so they get all mixed up with all this stuff. No, it's very simple. All you have to do is cut a slice and find out what's in that slice. In other words, what is in a single frame of the universal movie? You got to stop the universe. Then you'll know what now is, and you'll know what present is. And what it is one atom located with respect to all other atoms in the universe. And hopefully, unlike they say with time travel, that atom cannot move to the past and find itself in another frame, because that means that you're creating atoms all along. For every frame, you're creating new atoms. You're not moving, you're really static in the block universe, and all you did was, because you were able to move somehow, you were able to go and see that same atom at a different location inside the block universe. And again, all that's irrational. But that takes 10 years at the university, getting a PhD, really at a monastery, and then you'll understand it. Until you do, you'll never understand it. Yeah, it's called brainwashing, or what he said, what Dowd said at the beginning, I'm here to convince you. Okay? That's what they do. With that, I'll see you. I'll be seeing you on the 25th, because on the 24th, we're going to be celebrating. So I'll see you on Monday, the 25th.